Greetings everyone, it's time for a video, or in this case, Hammerzeit, which is German for hammer time. All goofy internet memes aside, it actually is hammer time, and we're going to talk about this Gedore Kombi plus R hammer. So let's have a quick background. Ghidorah is a large German tool manufacturer. They've been around a long time. Just some things I can think of off the top of my head. They make a dizzying array of tools for industrial, automotive, general, etc. use. You can always go check out and find their catalog, which is quite large. Quite interesting because they have some fascinating tools in it. They had some issues back, from what I recall reading about, back in, I think, like the 70s, 80s. They, in an effort to, I guess, compete or, I don't know, exposure, something, they made kind of a misstep. They started making, some of their tools were made in India and still had the Ghidorah name. I don't remember exactly how they distinguish them, other than, like, for example, if you see some of their wrenches from that time, they would be made in India. The quality was subpar. Many people were rather perturbed by that, and they kind of damaged their brand name some, so they stopped that. They've still continued to try to go and make, I guess, budget, I won't say cheap, but budget tools, and they've done it with some success, I guess. But with all that said, everything I've read indicates they've kind of restored some of their brand loyalty and quality by trying to get rid of some of the stuff they were doing in the past. Now, this isn't to say that they, along with other German manufacturers, and in that case, any tool manufacturer doesn't go and have, you know, lower cost, and in some cases lower quality tools, but that was just a particular one that people know about. You know, like Craftsman being made in China, for example, is another well-known you know, incident of that, and so forth. So anyway, all that aside, Ghidorah, among other things, makes hammers. In fact, they have a dizzying array of hammers. I don't know how many pages in their catalog, but they have a bunch of all sorts of different types, some of which I'd never even heard of. If you ever want to go check it out, feel free. It's kind of interesting. But in this particular case, we're going to talk about, like I said earlier, this Kombi plus R. It's an unusual hammer. It's listed under their recoilless hammers, or in, I guess, more our terms that we think of here in America, dead blow hammers. But it's not really a dead blow hammer. It's kind of all sorts of things. So I've got some others here to kind of give kind of a comparison of what they say, you know, their marketing wank or advertisement. Kind of it says this is one that it's saves money, you get versatility because you only need one hammer that kind of serves the purpose of 2 or 3 other hammers. In this particular case, they say it's got a hard steel head. And actually, before I go too much further, let me go ahead and clear out a couple of other little bits of information. It's made in Austria, and the model number is 247H35, which we'll come back and explain what that means in a minute. So anyway, back to what I was talking about. It's got a steel head here, which is kind of like an engineer's hammer. So in this particular case, I've got a Craftsman, what they guess they call an engineer's hammer. It has the ball peen, which obviously this doesn't, but in some ways, you know, most of the time you really use this anyway. So in that regards, they compare it, you know, they say, hey, it's very similar to that. The other thing of course, they say they have the recoilless part. You have this plastic, they listed in the catalog as a polyamide head, similar to nylon, or probably actually is nylon. Can't imagine they would use naturally occurring polyamide, even though I guess you could. But in this case, it's more like, you know, say a plastic hammer like this no-name cheapo I picked up at Harbor Freight some time ago. So it's got the same, you know, where you got these plastic heads. This one's got something similar. It's very hard, but that's the point behind it. The other thing, which isn't very evident or evident at all, is that, though I can kind of hear it, this is also, they said it's a dead blow or recoilless, or in, you know, like I said, our case, a dead blow hammer, similar to this one I picked up at, I don't know, one of the big box stores. but I can shake it, and inside, let's see, I'm going to hold it up here, maybe you can hear it. There are, just like in this standard cheap dead blow, there's steel balls in it that, according to their catalog, have a high carbon content. So, in other words, I guess technically speaking, it does kind of meet the definition of all three of these other hammers. Now, some other bits of information about it. Let's talk about some, we'll move these out of the way for a minute. Let me go into a little more information about specifically this hammer. It is, in this case, I said the model number is 247H35. So what that means is it's 247, whatever that's the series. H is H for hickory for the handle type, and the 35 means it is a 35 millimeter diameter head. They have a 30 millimeter and a 40 millimeter. I picked this up on eBay some time ago for, I don't know, probably about a third of the cost is what you would get it if you bought it from a dealer in America. So I was selling it new, free shipping, like, hey, why not? So initial thoughts in terms of how it feels, it's a little head heavy, I guess, but they're kind of supposed to be, since this is supposed to be kind of a, you know, a dead blow hammer, I guess, in a way. For my taste, the handle is a little bit on the thick side, but not terribly so, and it might just be that, you know, say if I compare to this to me feels a little better, but it's a skinny handle, and my hands are a little bit on the small side compared to probably some other people. It's comfortable though. The handle itself, you know, in other words, besides being smooth, is you know, it's got this nice paint job and it's got a pretty good finish on it. I don't know what that would be, probably lacquer. So let's see. They say the weight of this is 690 grams, and actually, let me. I usually don't verify these things, but let me see if I can dig up my scale. Maybe we can actually verify whether or not that's true. Hopefully. Yes, hello. And if we put it on here, what do we get? Yeah, a little bit on the light side, 667. So let me try weighing it again. Well, actually, let me do it like this. Well, yeah, it's a little bit on the light side compared to what they list, but not really that much of a difference. It's supposedly 310 millimeters long, which it is just about that, which is basically a little over a foot. So that's a couple of bits of information about it there in terms of physical characteristics. So the hickory handle is kind of an interesting thing. Both Hammerzeit and Ghidorah mention that hickory is preferred in the German DIN standards, that's similar to ISO standards or others, but the German ones, it's just, that's what they call them. I'm sure it means something in German and I don't know what it is. But they say that ash is the minimum specified by the standard, but hickory is preferred, and part of the reason why they say hickory is preferred is it's more durable than ash, and part of it is that the fibers in the handle, or in the ash wood, or in hickory wood, are longer, and thus provided a little more strength and flexibility. The way pretty much most of the German tool manufacturers show is if there's a break, what'll happen is, like if say something goes bad and there's a problem with the hammer, or maybe the handle's worn out, the hammer itself will break, but it won't snap. But if with ash, which apparently has a shorter fiber structure, it'll snap completely, thus is a little bit more dangerous. So the other thing is a little more flexible, so it's a little bit better at handling shock and not transferring it as much to your hand. So that's kind of what I see a lot of them say, so it's probably pretty true. I haven't really noticed a difference. I mean, other than this, I don't really have any hammers that really say, hey, I'm a hickory versus ash or whatever. So I'll take their word for it. I don't really think there'd be something that they would say is not true. Other interesting points, of course, this is steel. Inside there's steel balls. We'll come back to that again in a second. I mentioned it earlier. One thing I do like is they have a pin In this case, it's a roll pin that is used to mechanically affix the handle to the head. So this thing isn't just going to fly off. You know, there's no wedges or anything like you might see, say, in a, you know, a hammer like this. You can see that too well, but there's wedges there. So in that regard, I think it's pretty nice. Let me get a little closer and focus in a bit on that. Like I said, they've got, you know, here's the Ghidorah. They have their combi hammer, the model number. I don't know what that means, and then made in Austria. And then, of course, they have their stamp and whatnot. Other things of interest is, of course, that they have this steel sleeve, which is pretty nice. It provides protection, so like if you have a miss hit, you might hit something, and in this case, it's going to hit steel, which is pretty good because it will protect the handle from breaking. Apart from that, there's not really much else to say about it. In terms of just items about itself, things to think about compared to others. In terms of, I think I'd weighed this, and in terms of size, they're almost exactly the same. There's no real practical difference, honestly, between them in terms of size. You know, the handle's a little skinnier, and then, you know, this is more steel, but it's kind of a different thing. One thing is that's kind of interesting about this head is replaceable, what you're supposed to do. And they have a diagram somewhere, I think you can see it, where you're supposed to put this in a vise, and I'll kind of hold it like this is the vise, and then you pry it off. And then what you're supposed to do is you take the new head, put it in there, put it in the jaws of the vise, and then squeeze it in. So, you know, pretty nice feature there. The heads are available. Of course, if your handle gets messed up, you can just knock the pin out, buy a new one, and put the pin back in, or I don't know, maybe it comes with another pin. Another nice feature of it. So from that regard, it's pretty, you know, they talk about this as being, you know, versatile and having, you know, features for long use, and I think it kind of meets that. One other thing compared to, like, say, this particular plastic hammer, they're both 35 millimeters. The difference is, though, as I said before, this is the polyamide, probably nylon. This is acetate, and this is probably polyurethane or something like that. So that's pretty much most of the details. One other thing to say, the dead blow, just to give you a rough idea of how that works, though I'm sure you can look this up, or probably people know about it already. In essence, it works like this. You have a cavity inside of the hammer. In this case, this one, you're going to have this is the steel part, right? So, and then let's assume this is the plastic, right? Inside, there are a bunch of tiny, let me zoom in a bit here so you can see it a little better. Bunch of tiny balls. They used to use lead balls, but lead is, of course, kind of frowned upon now with good reason. These are steel balls with a heavy carbon content. So what happens is as you swing the hammer, like, you know, say go back, all the balls will shift over, right? And then you'll come back in, and then they'll be on the back side of your swing, right, back here. And then when you contact the surface, they'll all, normally what would happen is you would hit and you might bounce. In this particular case, because these are here and containing all that momentum, what'll happen is they'll hit, and then it's kind of like a double hit where they'll all hold and kind of counter the bounce force back from when you strike your surface. So, and they you know, it transmits more of the momentum into your strike. So that's kind of how that works. I don't know if there's much else to cover. I think that's probably a pretty good overview of this hammer. It's an unusual hammer. I haven't really seen too many people talk about this too much. In fact, I actually haven't seen anyone other than a couple of German and language marketing videos. I don't know, maybe I've missed some. It's certainly possible, but it's different. Now, you know, like if I compare it to, say, this large plastic dead blow hammer, which, you know, like I said, I got it at a big box store. I don't even know what. Yeah, it just simply says dead blow hammer. You know, it's roughly, let me zoom back out a bit here. It's roughly It's roughly the same size. Again, there's a kind of a fixed size that it's going to be similar to. This is a little bit longer, not much, but with the handle, with this knob, your grip sort of gets pushed up. So, you know, roughly in the same area. In terms of weight, this is significantly heavier. I think this is, well, I'd have to weigh it. Oh yeah, 28 ounces. So it's going to be heavier by a pretty good amount. I'd have to go and do a conversion on that. But, you know, it's got the plastic face. So it's debatable whether or not these two are even comparable. I mean, I'd say they are because they both have the same basic dead blow mechanism, but you know, these things are a dime a dozen, and you get the big fat head. I use this one a bunch, as you can tell. It's pretty used, but it's not bad. And then this Craftsman Engineer's hammer I picked up some time ago, made in USA. I don't know that you can get them anymore in USA. Probably some, or if you can get them at all. It's okay. I don't really use it that much. I've used it some, but this is something I think I'm going to use more in the automotive stuff. I've used it a few times to tap some things, but not very often. But it's a pretty nice hammer, I have to say. It's pretty well built, and which you would expect it to be. It is a little pricier than, you know, these. This thing was like $5 with a coupon. Horror freight. Craftsman, I don't remember how much I paid for this, and this was about like 7 or 8 at a big box store. So, you know, this thing is probably the cost of all three combined, but if it replaces them all, then it's probably worth it. And given the maintenance pieces with the replaceable head and the replaceable handle, I think over the long term, this might be, for some people, a pretty good investment. Anyway, so hope you like this. It's just another basic video, you know, just talking about this. If you like, you can subscribe, sign up for notifications, like, dislike, comment. And anyway, I hope you enjoy this, and thanks for watching.